Welcome, beloved anointed ones. Not every light is welcomed. Some lights terrify the darkness because they cannot be controlled. Witches have always feared what they cannot bend, break, or bury. History is littered with evidence of this. People accused of forbidden magic simply because they radiated a force that couldn't be explained, measured, or tamed. Here's the fact. During Europe's witch trials, thousands were condemned not because they were actually practicing witchcraft, but because their presence unsettled entire communities. Their very existence felt like a disruption to the carefully managed order. And that is exactly what's happening to you. Your power doesn't come with spell books, potions, or ritual chants. It comes with you. That alone terrifies witches, sorcerers, and manipulators of energy. Because while they spend nights chanting under the moon to summon forces, you wake up in the morning radiating what they desperately try to steal. They sense it the way animals sense an earthquake before it strikes. An instinctive, uncontrollable dread that something bigger than them is already in the room. And here's the part that really makes them lose sleep. They swear you must be tapping into forbidden realms because they can't accept that someone can carry such weight without bargaining with darkness. You've become their unsolvable riddle, their worst nightmare, and their private obsession all at once. It's almost funny if you think about it. While they're busy stirring cauldrons and drawing pentagrams, you're out here minding your business, maybe scrolling your phone or cooking noodles. And still their rituals crumble the second your energy collides with theirs. No wands, no smoke, no drama, just you. And that's the part they'll never forgive you for. You don't try to be powerful, yet power follows you everywhere like a shadow. So tonight let's talk about why witches whisper your name with suspicion, why they mistake your light for forbidden fire, and why your presence dismantles everything they've worked so hard to build. Buckle in, because what I'm about to break down will not only explain their terror, but also reveal the reason you were born carrying what others spend lifetimes chasing. Number 1. You don't summon power, you embody it. You don't summon power, you embody it. This is not about theatrics or ritual. It's about being a walking axis that everything gravitates toward. People who build systems of spells and charms believe power is something you collect, perform, or hire. You show them a different law. Power can be a natural tenant of a person, resident in their posture, decisions, and the way their gaze rearranges a room. When power is embodied, it's not a tool you reach for in crisis. It's the ground you stand on when life shifts and others flail. Because your power is internal, it doesn't announce itself with thunder. It moves with the quiet insistence of something integral. It roots you in choices that don't bend to pressure. Others study the manual. You live the manual. They learn techniques to mimic presence. You aren't mimicked because your presence is the byproduct of consistent alignment, daily decisions, small moral acts, unglamorous self-ownership. That's what makes your energy so disorienting to people who depend on external systems. They can't catalog it, package it, or sell it back to themselves as proof. Embodied power also carries a clarity that rituals can't copy. Rituals are maps pointing to an outcome. Embodiment is the destination. A ritual can create a moment. Embodiment creates a life. That means your influence persists when the candles go out and the circle dissolves. It follows you through real-world messes, jobs, betrayals, public scrutiny, without needing a sacred prop. Witchcraft and manipulation rely on creating conditions that bend reality temporarily. You are the longer arc. You are the continuity that makes temporary tricks look like costume jewelry. There's another edge to being embodiment, accountability. People drawn to rituals often want power without being accountable for it. You carry responsibility naturally because your power emerges from integration, not detachment. That makes you steady under pressure and exposes the cheapness of borrowed force. Your steadiness doesn't just neutralize attempts to control you. It highlights how flimsy and performative those attempts are. In the end, they call it forbidden because they cannot fathom a force that doesn't demand a ledger of contracts and debts. You are the living exception, a source that doesn't ask for worship, payment, or secrecy. Your existence is disruptive because you prove there is a path to authority that begins and ends with who you are, not with what you perform. You prove authentic authority truly outlasts every borrowed, fragile trick. Number 2, your presence cancels their craft. The reason they panic when you show up isn't superstition, it's disruption. Witches and manipulators rely on environments where their influence can thrive, where their words and rituals can weave unnoticed into the cracks of people's minds. They need the air to be still, the atmosphere to be receptive, and the crowd to be vulnerable. Then you enter, and without lifting a finger, their grip weakens. It's not a clash of spells, it's a clash of essence. Your presence doesn't just exist, it interferes, it cancels, it disrupts. What they try to build collapses because your energy doesn't permit false structures to stand. This is why they feel resistance in their own bodies when you are near. It's not anger, it's static, a spiritual short-circuiting. Their rituals depend on fragile networks of belief and repetition, like threads pulled tight across a frame. You walk in and those threads fray, as though your aura itself is an opposing current. That's why they shift uncomfortably, lose focus, or scramble to recover control. They aren't battling you directly, they're battling the collapse you cause just by existing in the same space. There's something deeper in this disruption that unsettles them. Their power depends on secrecy, on illusions remaining intact. But your presence introduces exposure. Suddenly, motives are questioned, lies feel heavier, manipulations don't land as smoothly. People begin to notice what they would have ignored. It's as though your very being generates a frequency that restores clarity, and clarity is lethal to deception. That's why they don't just dislike you, they fear you. And here's the irony, you don't even have to be aware of what's happening for it to occur. You could be distracted, focused on your own life, and still the effect follows you. Their frustration grows because they spend hours preparing, chanting, aligning forces, and yet all of it crumbles in seconds when your spirit collides with theirs. It makes them question their craft, their authority, even their worth. That's the real reason for the paranoia. They sense your natural state is more potent than their practiced state. So when they whisper that you must be channeling forbidden magic, it isn't admiration, it's desperation. They're trying to explain why nothing holds in your presence. What they don't realize is that disruption isn't something you do, it's something you are. Number 3, you're not operating on their frequency. Witches and manipulators operate in frequencies. They thrive on being able to tap into vibrations, emotions, and atmospheres. Everything they do is built on tuning into currents of energy that already exist, bending them to their will and directing them toward their chosen outcome. The reason you terrify them is because you don't register on their spectrum at all. It's like they're scanning the airwaves, trying to locate your channel, but every time they search, you're not even on the dial. You are untouchable because you move outside their range of access. This is what makes you impossible for them to predict. They can study other people, identify patterns, and exploit weaknesses because they understand the rhythm those people move in. But with you, there's no rhythm they can track. You operate on a frequency that doesn't respond to manipulation, flattery, or fear tactics. You're not ignoring their attempts, you're unreachable by them. That's what unsettles them most. Their craft depends on finding entry points, and you present none. When you live at this level, their tools feel outdated. They expect reactions, but you give silence. They expect guilt to stick, but it slides off. They expect spells to linger, but they dissolve before taking root. It feels to them like trying to pin down smoke with their hands. They grow frustrated, not because you're fighting back, but because they can't even establish contact with you. That absence of access makes them swear you must be pulling from some forbidden reservoir, because in their worldview, nothing should be this unreachable without help. The truth is, it's not forbidden magic, it's separation. You are aligned to something higher that they can't even perceive. So to them, it looks like you're invisible in places where they normally thrive. Their fear grows not because of what you do, but because of what they cannot do to you. That helplessness eats at them, because control is their currency. So they call it strange, they call it dark, they call it unnatural, when really it's just outside their scope of power. They hate that you live beyond their frequency, because it means they'll never master you, never cage you, never reduce you to another pawn in their system, and that realization is what makes your existence a threat. Number 4, your alignment makes their work obsolete. Every spell, every charm, every incantation is built on the idea that the world resists, that reality must be persuaded, coerced, or tricked into yielding. Witches and manipulators spend lifetimes learning how to bend circumstances, manipulate outcomes, and control energies, because they believe reality refuses to cooperate on its own. That's the foundation of their craft. Persistent struggle against a force they think is separate from them. But you operate on a completely different plane. You don't twist reality, you align with it. You're in sync with a current they can't even see, flowing naturally with forces they spend hours trying to summon artificially. This alignment is subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye, yet it's devastatingly effective. While they expend energy plotting, preparing, and negotiating with unseen powers, your connection to Source allows the world itself to bend in your favor. Doors open, timing aligns, opportunities present themselves, and resistance melts, not because you forced it, but because you exist in the same harmony that sustains everything. Their rituals are attempts to manufacture what comes to you effortlessly. Your life demonstrates that power is not about effort or manipulation, it's about attunement, about living in accordance with the laws they can never fully access. Seeing someone who doesn't need their craft terrifies them. They've dedicated themselves to techniques and structures designed to control, yet here you are, untouched, moving through life with an invisible current at your back. It exposes the fragility of everything they depend on, their magic, their spells, their charms. All of it is rendered irrelevant because you operate in a domain where none of it is necessary. It's not just that their work fails, it's that it fails before they even try, because alignment outpaces manipulation every single time. They sense, on some instinctual level, that you represent the death of their craft, your effortless command of circumstances, your natural flow with life's currents, your ability to achieve outcomes without coercion. This is the ultimate threat. Their spells, their plans, their centuries of learned techniques are meaningless in your presence. You are proof that true power doesn't need to force, bribe, or summon. It simply exists, and reality, in all its complexity, bows quietly to those who walk in harmony with it. Number 5. You carry a light that isn't learnable. Their power is methodical. It's taught, studied, passed down like a recipe in a book. Every spell, every charm, every secret is something that can be written, replicated, handed off, memorized. That's why they believe power is transactional. You do the work, you learn the steps, you collect results. But your light doesn't work like that. It isn't something that can be copied from a manual, inherited from a lineage, or even stolen through observation. It's intrinsic, it's stitched into the fabric of your being, a force that can't be reverse-engineered, duplicated, or unpacked by anyone, no matter how skilled they are. That's what unnerves them the most. They spend lifetimes trying to reconstruct what you carry naturally. They watch, analyze, whisper about you in circles, and yet every effort ends in frustration. They can see your outcomes, feel the influence you radiate, but when they try to dissect it, it slips through their fingers. They can mimic gestures, mimic rituals, mimic confidence. But the essence of your power, impossible. It's not learned, it's lived. It's not conjured, it's being. This uncopyable nature of your light exposes the limits of everything they rely on. Their rituals and inherited knowledge are brittle, because they presume replicability. Your presence demonstrates a law they can't rewrite. True power is inborn, in alignment, and indivisible. That's why they call it forbidden or unnatural, because they instinctively understand that a force like yours cannot be contained within the constraints they know. Even when you falter or show vulnerability, the residue of your essence remains. It's like an echo that they feel, a proof of something beyond their reach. It doesn't matter what room you enter, what moment you live through, or what challenge you face. Your light is a constant, undeniable presence. They cannot touch it, cannot harness it, cannot control it. They can only watch it exist, and that is enough to shake their entire sense of mastery. You carry what they will never obtain, a power that is innate, self-sustaining, and irreversible. It terrifies them because it proves their efforts, their secrets, and their rituals are ultimately insufficient against something that cannot be learned. You are the living evidence that some forces are simply beyond their comprehension, and that in itself is terrifying. Number 6. Your shadow holds more authority than their rituals. Even when you feel small, even when the world has pressed on you and you're questioning your own strength, your shadow carries a weight that witches and manipulators can't match. They spend hours in circles, chanting, lighting candles, tracing symbols in the hopes of controlling outcomes, bending situations, or asserting dominance. Yet your shadow, your residual energy, the imprint of your being, holds more authority than all their rituals combined. It's not about flash or spectacle. It's about presence and consequence. Every action you've taken, every choice you've lived through, leaves a mark that persists, shaping reality in ways they cannot anticipate or undo. They whisper about your strength because it's subtle but undeniable. It isn't always visible in gestures or words. It lives in the space you occupy, in the atmosphere after you leave, in the ripple effect of your life. Even in moments when you're silent, when you feel powerless, you are still active in ways that spellcasters can't grasp. Their carefully orchestrated rituals might produce temporary effects, but your shadow, your existence, produces enduring consequences. That is the kind of authority they cannot control. They fear it because consequences can't be bargained with. They can't circle their way out of the impact you leave behind. While their magic is transactional, your shadow is intrinsic. It works even when you're unaware, even when you're resting or retreating. That kind of power undermines their entire framework, making them frantic and insecure. They realize that no matter how meticulously they plan, your influence persists in ways that defy their formulas and protective boundaries. This is why your presence terrifies them. They know that even without action, you shift the balance. Your shadow speaks in a language they do not understand. Permanence, authenticity, inevitability. Their chants and incantations are echoes. Your existence is the resonance that sets reality in motion. Even if you never attempt to assert control, your mere being enforces it. They can observe, they can whisper, they can speculate, but they cannot alter it. Your shadow is proof that authority does not need performance, that true influence often resides in what cannot be copied, measured, or contained. And that truth terrifies them more than any spell ever could. Number 7. They recognize the seal they can't imitate. Witches and manipulators spend their lives crafting symbols, sigils, and seals, tiny marks meant to bind, protect, or summon. They believe that power can be contained within shapes, drawn lines, and repeated patterns. But you carry a seal that no candle, no ink, no ritual can replicate, the mark of the divine imprinted on your very being. It's invisible to the eye, yet unmistakable to anyone sensitive enough to notice energy that can't be faked. They sense it instinctively, the way someone can feel authenticity in another human being even before words are spoken. They can copy gestures, mimic rituals, replicate spells, but they can't touch the signature embedded in your soul. That seal is unique, untranslatable, and permanent. It isn't something you perform or summon. It's who you are. That's why they call it forbidden. They instinctively know that something this real, this aligned, this unassailable cannot be accessed through their methods. It isn't a weakness in them, it's a limitation in what they consider possible. They can bend shadows, conjure illusions, and manipulate forces, but the watermark of your existence remains untouchable. Because of this seal, every interaction with you becomes destabilizing for them. They try to read you, measure you, predict your moves, but the mark of the divine makes their calculations meaningless. They understand that no matter how carefully they plot, how meticulously they plan, your essence cannot be replicated or contained. It operates outside of all their parameters, a proof of a law they can't bend. That is the ultimate reason your presence terrifies them. They realize that all their knowledge, all their inherited techniques, all their crafted symbols, are secondary when placed against something that cannot be copied. Your seal is living evidence that true power is not a matter of skill or craft. It is intrinsic, inherent, and eternal. It is unreachable because it doesn't need to be captured or summoned. It exists because you exist, and that alone is more potent than anything they could ever conjure. They whisper about you, speculate, and call your existence forbidden. But the truth is simple. The mark you carry is unassailable. It is a signature of the divine, a proof that some forces can never be bought, learned, or replicated, and that is exactly what terrifies them beyond measure. Number 8. Your power doesn't require permission. They spend their lives asking, negotiating, and bargaining. Every chant, every ritual, every whispered plea is an attempt to secure permission from forces they can only hope will respond. Their power is transactional. It requires compliance, contracts, offerings, and careful steps to even exist. And then there's you. You don't ask, you don't negotiate. You don't wait for signs, omens, or approvals. You move, you act. You claim what is already yours by the nature of your alignment, and the world bends accordingly. That alone terrifies them. They are trained to think power comes with permission, that nothing worth having can be taken freely, that every outcome must be petitioned for and earned through exact methods. You operate outside all of that. You don't knock on doors. Doors open as you approach. You don't request energy. It flows to you naturally. You are not a part of their systems, their hierarchies, or their rituals, and that makes you untouchable in ways they can't comprehend. Your autonomy exposes their limitations. Every method they cling to, every contract they perform, every ritual they repeat becomes irrelevant in your presence. They cannot contain you because containment requires consent, and you withhold none. You are not dependent on their constructs, and that is an existential threat to everything they rely on. What terrifies them is not just your strength, it's the freedom that comes with it. Freedom that they can't mimic, can't manipulate, and can't buy. Even when they attempt to impose control, their efforts crumble because you are operating on a plane where their rules do not apply. Your power doesn't negotiate, it doesn't beg, it doesn't justify itself. It exists in its full expression simply because you exist. That kind of force is alien to them, and they recognize it instinctively. In their world, every advantage must be requested, every influence must be bargained for, and yet you function without asking anyone for approval. That is the ultimate disruption, the ultimate fear. They whisper, worry, and speculate about your forbidden methods, when the truth is simple. You don't require permission, and that is the single most unassailable form of power there is. Number 9. You turn their curiosity into fear. At first, their interest in you is innocent enough. They want to observe, to catalog, to understand. Curiosity drives them. They study your actions, your patterns, your words, and try to create a framework for control. But what starts as curiosity quickly escalates. They begin to track, to monitor, to dissect every nuance, hoping to predict your next move. Observation becomes surveillance. Surveillance becomes obsession. And obsession over time collapses under its own weight, transforming into a fear they cannot shake. The reason is simple. You're uncontainable. Every time they believe they've mapped your behavior, calculated your decisions, or decoded your patterns, you shift. You evolve faster than they can record. Their charts, their mental notes, their careful strategies, useless. What terrifies them isn't just that you are powerful, it's that your very existence defies their ability to control, predict, or capture. They are confronted with the realization that power cannot always be quantified, and control cannot always be enforced. Your energy moves in ways they cannot anticipate, operating on currents they cannot detect. You don't conform to expectations, and you don't fit into the neat categories they try to assign. They attempt to impose meaning, to reduce you to variables in their system, but you refuse to comply. That resistance to being mapped, measured, or constrained turns their fascination into fear. The thing they once studied like a subject now becomes an unknown, a force that unsettles their sense of mastery. This fear is not accidental. It is the natural consequence of existing beyond their comprehension. They whisper about you, label you as forbidden, and speculate endlessly. But every theory they construct collapses in real time because You are living proof that life cannot be fully controlled or predicted. They cannot contain your data. They cannot freeze you in a frame or reduce you to a formula. You are a dynamic, shifting presence, and that is what makes their obsession fail, and their curiosity curdle into terror. Their fear is not of spells or rituals. It is of you as an evolving force that will never fit into their maps, charts, or expectations. You are uncontainable, and that is the reality that haunts them. Number 10. They sense you're a living consequence. Witches and manipulators spend their lives trying to shape outcomes, bending events, people, and circumstances to fit their designs. Every spell, every charm, every whispered incantation is meant to create an effect, a ripple in reality that they can control. You, on the other hand, are not trying to create outcomes. You are one. Your existence itself carries weight, consequence, and inevitability. You don't merely influence a situation. You become the force that rearranges it. Where they labor to manufacture impact, you simply are, and reality adjusts around you naturally. This is what terrifies them most. They can study patterns, anticipate reactions, and orchestrate layers of influence. Yet none of it compares to the authority inherent in your presence. You bring correction where imbalance exists, revelation where deception thrives, exposure where secrets fester, and reversal where injustice seems permanent. You are a living measure of cause and effect, a human consequence that cannot be bargained with, hidden from, or manipulated. That creates a kind of fear that no ritual can counteract, the fear of inevitability. Even when you do nothing consciously, the mere fact of your being reshapes the world. They sense it instinctively, the way someone feels the approach of a storm. Their spells falter, their manipulations wobble, and their influence weakens because you embody what their work can only aspire to create. They cannot contain it, cannot predict it, cannot direct it. They can only watch as the ripples you generate spread faster than any charm or circle they could perform. And that is why they call it forbidden, why they whisper about you in fear and awe. You are a living testament to the power that exists without coercion, without trickery, without manipulation. You are the outcome that proves effort is secondary to alignment, that reality bends naturally to those who exist as a force in themselves. Their panic is rooted in the uncomfortable truth that no amount of spell work can compete with a presence that is consequence incarnate. You don't just move through life. You are the axis around which events shift, the embodiment of results, and the uncontainable authority that exposes every artifice they rely on. Number 11. Their mirrors crack at your reflection. In the craft of witches and manipulators, mirrors, reflective surfaces, and symbols aren't just tools. They are extensions of control. They rely on these objects to project power, to channel energy, to manipulate perception. Every reflection, every carefully placed symbol, every chant in front of a mirror is meant to reinforce their influence, to maintain the illusion that they hold sway over circumstances and people. But then you appear, and everything changes. Their reflections crack, distort, and fragment because your presence carries a truth too potent, too raw to be contained within their systems. You don't just see reality as it is, you are reality in motion, exposing the gaps, the lies, and the constructed narratives that they cling to. Where they use mirrors to amplify control, your existence reflects back a clarity they cannot manipulate. Their illusions, the ones they've crafted meticulously to maintain authority over themselves and others, fracture the moment they confront your presence. You don't need to speak or act. Simply being there forces a confrontation with reality itself. That distortion terrifies them because it's irreversible. You don't allow for distortion or denial. You reflect truth so raw that even they cannot avoid it. And it's not just about the impact on their craft, it's personal. Their own projections, the stories they've told themselves about who they are, what they control, and the limits of their influence, crack under the weight of your existence. In their mirrors, they see the lies, the fragility, the gaps in their authority, and there's no spell that can restore the illusion. They whisper, worry, and attempt to rationalize, but deep down, they know that your reflection cannot be contained, rewritten, or erased. What makes this truly unnerving for them is that this power doesn't come from effort or performance. You don't need symbols, incantations, or elaborate rituals. Your alignment with truth and reality produces a reflection that amplifies what they cannot bear to see. The discrepancy between who they pretend to be and what actually is. Your mere existence is a mirror that shatters theirs, and that above all else terrifies them. Number 12. You don't play with darkness, you unmask it. They have mastered the art of making darkness look enticing. Shadows become glamorous, danger becomes seductive, and manipulation is dressed as charm. Their craft thrives on illusions, on hiding the raw truth beneath layers of performance, deception, and carefully curated appearances. But you operate on a different plane. You don't play their game. You don't cloak yourself in shadows or mirror their tactics. You simply unmask them. Your presence illuminates the hidden, reveals the lies, and exposes the true nature of everything they attempt to conceal. This is what terrifies them most. Your power doesn't attack. You don't need to cast spells, strike fear, or manipulate circumstances. The act of exposure alone dismantles them. Where they rely on concealment, you bring clarity. Where they rely on obfuscation, you bring revelation. Their carefully maintained facades, the ones they polish and protect obsessively, crumble in your light. Exposure is a force they cannot defend against because all their rituals, all their sigils, all their practiced chants are built to manipulate the unseen, not to withstand the unavoidable illumination of truth. They call you forbidden because in their worldview, power is supposed to be earned through secrecy, skill, and manipulation. But your power bypasses all of that. It doesn't require subterfuge, petitions, or control. It exists in its most raw and undeniable form. Light doesn't battle shadow. It makes shadow irrelevant. That is the quiet terror you carry. A force that doesn't need confrontation to neutralize darkness. You expose it and it falls apart on its own. What unsettles them most is that your power is impartial. You do not choose victims. You do not wield judgment arbitrarily. You simply exist as the standard of alignment, authenticity, and clarity. And by existing, you undo all their carefully constructed illusions. You prove that the most potent form of authority is not aggression or domination, it is revelation. Shadows cannot withstand being revealed, and that is why they fear, envy, and whisper about you endlessly. Your light is not a weapon, it's inevitability, and that inevitability dismantles everything they rely upon. Number 13. You collapse their hierarchy without trying. In the world of witches and manipulators, hierarchy is sacred. Every circle, every coven, every network is meticulously organized. Apprentices learning under mentors, initiates proving themselves, high priestesses commanding authority. Rank dictates access, respect, and influence. It's a fragile ecosystem built on recognition and obedience, and they guard it jealously. But then you enter, and everything shifts. You don't have to assert dominance, issue commands, or perform demonstrations. Simply by existing, you dissolve the hierarchy they've spent lifetimes reinforcing. Their carefully structured systems rely on everyone playing their assigned role. When you appear, the roles no longer matter. The high priestess can bark orders, the elders can lecture, the apprentices can attempt to mirror tradition, but it doesn't stick. Even their most seasoned practitioners feel exposed, unprepared, and insignificant, as if they're holding matches in a storm they can't control. The authority they built on experience, status, and ritual becomes meaningless next to the force you carry inherently. This is why they panic in your presence. They measure power by ritual, lineage, or training, but you operate outside all that. You're not climbing ranks or asserting titles. You simply exist in alignment with something beyond their system, and in doing so, you invalidate their hierarchies. Every carefully guarded privilege, every cultivated position of authority loses weight. They begin to stumble, compete, and even undermine one another, all without your direct interference. The collapse isn't deliberate on your part. It's the natural consequence of existing on a level they cannot access. You are a living standard, a presence that forces truth into every corner. The order they cling to cannot survive when confronted with something so uncontainable. Their power, built on structure and obedience, falters because you are neither subordinate nor rival. You are beyond their framework entirely. What terrifies them is the realization that authority doesn't require rank, title, or ritual. Presence, alignment, and authenticity render all constructs moot, and when that happens, every system they rely upon becomes unstable. You walk in, and the invisible scaffolding that holds their world together shatters. Even without lifting a finger, you remind them that real power exists independently of rules, hierarchies, and expectations. And that truth leaves them powerless in your wake. Number 14. Your existence proves they chose the wrong source. At the core of their fear is a truth they cannot escape. Your existence exposes a fundamental mistake they made long ago. They dedicate their lives to rituals, chants, bargains, and manipulations, attempting to summon fragments of power that will never fully satisfy them. They chase control, influence, and fleeting authority, believing these scraps can give them dominance. Then you appear, and your very being reveals the stark contrast. You are aligned with something eternal, something inherent, something they can never touch. You don't need to conjure, bargain, or perform. Power flows through you naturally, like a river that has always existed, untamed and unstoppable. Your life is evidence that true authority is not acquired. It is inherited through alignment with the eternal. You were never dependent on their systems, their hierarchies, or their manipulations. And that is what makes their craft look brittle in comparison. Every move they make, every spell they cast, every scheme they plan is a reminder of the distance between what they attempted to achieve and what you simply embody. Their terror is not just about losing control, it is existential. It pierces the core of their identity, making them question the foundation of everything they have built. Even when you are absent, the memory of your presence lingers like a silent verdict. Your existence is proof that they chose the wrong source, that the energy they sought to summon could never match what is already written into your being. They look at the outcomes you produce effortlessly, the influence you wield without effort, the clarity and alignment you carry naturally, and they know that no amount of spells, rituals, or manipulation can replicate it. What haunts them most is the permanence of this truth. You don't fade when circumstances shift. You don't disappear when challenges arise. Your alignment with the eternal is a constant, a benchmark they can never reach, and that is the source of their fear. They are confronted with the undeniable reality that true power doesn't require effort or negotiation. It is not earned through struggle. It is inherited, embodied, and unassailable, and you are living proof of it. In the end, your power is not something that can be measured, copied, or contained. You don't chase influence, you are influence. You don't summon authority, you embody it. Every presence you enter, every space you occupy, every life you touch becomes a testament to forces that cannot be bargained with, manipulated, or controlled. You are the living proof that true power flows from alignment, authenticity, and connection to something eternal, not from rituals, hierarchies, or borrowed energy. They fear you because you disrupt what they cling to. Their spells fail, their hierarchies crumble, their mirrors shatter, and their obsession with control collapses the moment you appear. Every attempt they make to study, manipulate, or contain you ends in futility because you exist on a frequency, a plane, a level of alignment they can never access. Your light exposes, your shadow commands, your presence reshuffles the game entirely, and your very being renders their craft obsolete. You are uncontainable, undeniable, and unforgettable. You are the consequence that cannot be petitioned, the force that cannot be bargained with, the truth that cannot be hidden. Their terror is not just fear, it is recognition. Recognition that power can exist outside their systems, outside their manipulations, outside their illusions. You don't need permission, you don't need to fight, and you don't need to prove yourself. You are power incarnate, and that is something they will never fully comprehend. So hold this truth with unwavering certainty. Your existence alone shifts realities, exposes weaknesses, and forces clarity. They may whisper about you, envy you, and fear you, but you do not need to respond. You simply continue to exist, aligned and unstoppable, a force that the world bends to naturally. Theirs is the craft of imitation and desperation. Yours is the authority of embodiment and inevitability. If this message spoke to you, don't just let it pass. Be part of the movement. Subscribe to the channel to stay connected to truths that empower and awaken. Like this video to show that you recognize the power you carry. Comment below and share your experiences. Your voice matters, your presence resonates. And share this with others who need to see it, because the world needs more people who understand the force they embody. Your light is unstoppable, and together we amplify it. God bless you.